It was just another busy day on a city sidewalk when Clint Eastwood walked by an art stand. Most people didn't notice him, he was just another face in the crowd. But when he stopped to look at some paintings and listen to the young artist, something special happened. The artist wasn't just any regular painter. Sophie Carter was fighting for her life, and what Clint did next changed everything. Sophie's journey began not on the sidewalk or in an art studio, but in a hospital room. The lights were bright, and the air carried the sharp scent of disinfectant. She sat on the edge of her bed as Dr. Patel delivered news she had been dreading. Her treatment was working, but it wasn't over. She needed more chemotherapy. That should have brought relief, but instead, it filled her with dread. The bigger problem wasn't her health, it was money. Without insurance, the cost of continued treatment would be overwhelming. Sophie watched as her mother tried to hide her tears. They had already drained their savings, and the medical bills kept piling up. Her parents were doing everything they could, but the financial strain was becoming unbearable. That night, Sophie couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how much her illness was costing her family, not just emotionally, but financially. She didn't want them to lose everything trying to save her. It was then that an idea sparked in her mind. She had always loved painting, art was her escape, her therapy. What if she could use her talent to help pay for her treatment? By morning, she made a decision. She would set up an art stand on a busy city street. Her mother helped her prepare, carefully arranging the canvases and supplies. But once the stand was set up, Sophie was on her own. She had spent days creating vibrant, emotional paintings, each one reflecting her inner world. She hoped someone would connect with her work, and maybe even buy a piece to help support her cause. The first few hours were discouraging. People passed by without stopping. Some glanced at her paintings, others read the sign explaining that all proceeds were going toward her cancer treatment. A few showed interest, but no one committed. One woman in a stylish jacket almost bought a small canvas but ultimately walked away. A man in a business suit paused long enough to read her message, but after a moment of contemplation, he too moved on. Finally, late in the afternoon, an elderly couple approached. They smiled warmly and admired a seascape Sophie had painted during one of her weaker moments in recovery. It reminded her of peace, of calm waters after a storm. Without hesitation, they paid $80 for the painting. It wasn't enough to cover the full cost of treatment, but it was a start, a small victory in a sea of uncertainty. Day after day, Sophie returned to the same spot. The sun beat down relentlessly, and exhaustion wore on her body. She was still undergoing treatment, and standing for long hours took its toll. Yet she remained determined. Some people were kind, offering words of encouragement or small donations. Others weren't so generous. A man in a leather jacket scoffed, telling her that nobody buys real art anymore. But Sophie refused to let negativity stop her. By the fourth day, she was exhausted. Sweat dripped from her brow, and her body ached from fatigue. She had only sold 3 paintings total. Doubt crept into her mind. Was this really helping? Was she making any difference? Then, unexpectedly, a young journalist named Emily stopped by. She was writing for a local arts blog and was immediately drawn to Sophie's story. She asked thoughtful questions, snapped photos of the paintings, and listened intently as Sophie shared her journey. The next day, the article went live, and everything changed. Word spread quickly online. Thousands of people read about the brave young artist battling cancer while trying to fund her treatment through her passion. Viewers flooded social media with messages of support, and soon, Sophie's stand became a destination. Strangers arrived with cash in hand, eager to purchase a painting and contribute to her cause. But the biggest surprise came one sunny afternoon when a tall man in a cowboy hat approached her stand. He studied the paintings with quiet intensity, especially a black and white piece depicting a lone cowboy riding across a desert landscape. Sophie didn't recognize him at first, until he introduced himself. It was Clint Eastwood. Sophie was stunned. The legendary actor and director stood before her, asking thoughtful questions about her story. She explained everything, the diagnosis, the financial struggles, the hope behind every brushstroke. Without saying much, Clint pulled out his checkbook and wrote her a check. When Sophie saw the number, $50,000, she gasped. That was more than she had ever imagined raising. She tried to refuse, overwhelmed by the gesture, but Clint insisted. "It's not charity," he said simply. "I just think it's a damn good painting." As word spread that Clint Eastwood was at her stand, a crowd gathered. Phones came out, capturing the moment. News outlets picked up the story, and within hours, Sophie's inbox was overflowing with messages from people around the world wanting to support her. A month later, Sophie completed her final round of chemotherapy. Every medical bill had been paid off. She received a personal letter from Clint, encouraging her to continue telling her story through art. Soon after, she was preparing for her first gallery show, with collectors reaching out from across the globe. The black and white desert painting now hangs proudly in Clint Eastwood's private collection, a reminder that sometimes, the most powerful changes come from simple acts of kindness. If you enjoyed this inspiring story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, we'd love to hear your thoughts.